going on, man? We'll see how this goes. I'm on YouTube as well, but it's way worse quality. So just let me know if the internet connection gets bad and I can figure out which one's working better. Let's turn that off. Yes, sir. Yeah, we'll probably end up sticking with Instagram. For whatever reason, last time, like, the sound was getting way worse, and I know sound is a sensitive topic, especially on my YouTube channel. We're talking about whatever we want. Right now, I'm just chilling. I don't have work tomorrow, so I'm cooling. This is my engine bay. What's going on, everybody? Yeah, I mean, you guys tell me what you want to talk about. You can ask me any questions. You know, whatever's going on, we can talk. I think I threw all my spice out in Fight Club yesterday, so I'm all cooled off now. So my YouTube messed up, man. I had to make a new one on my YouTube channel. I don't know why. I tried scheduling it and doing the same thing that I do with my regular videos, but for whatever reason, it didn't work. So I had to make a new one. So if you saw like the reminder or whatever that you said it didn't go off, that's why. Like, I'm on my computer right now and it's not even showing the one I scheduled. Proteining freaks. So this is going to be good, I think, actually. And I'm going to post my video, but there is a very unique setup that Proteining Freaks is going to have to do to make it work with our cars. And I didn't realize that, but a couple people asked me and I started digging and I found out it's completely different from the other cars, like the ones for S55 and N55. It doesn't install the same. So that's why it's taking a little while, because they basically have to make a custom wiring harness for our cars. Appreciate it, man. New Zealand is very far away, but it looks very nice. I'll have to visit sometime. Yeah, good job on the oil change. I actually had to look up a video on the oil change just to make sure I knew what I was doing, because my first one was like, what, maybe a year or two ago? Because my car has had the factory warranty and like the factory maintenance plan for the whole time. I just started doing my own oil changes. I was getting all the free oil changes. So I did have to look that up too. So don't feel bad about that. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't going to drain my transmission by mistake. You guys want to talk about turbos? Ooh, so that's a good question. I got a question on the YouTube channel about the M1 and M2 buttons, and you can install them, but it takes a little bit of wiring. God, I got to look that up again. But somebody actually used the M1 and M2 buttons from the F80 steering wheel, and they used it for like sport modes. So they wired it up the same way that your buttons work down by your shifter. And when they press like M1, it goes up to Sport and Sport Plus. And when they do M2, it goes down to Comfort. So with a little bit of wiring, you can make it work. And you can set different modes with it. What's the real horsepower of the B58? So you guys want to get me going too. We want to talk about turbos and dynos. Flowmax or Dock Race. So obviously, I like the Dock Race. I think the Flowmax is a good turbo, man. It's the best value for a hybrid turbo out there. I want support for more. So that's why I went with the Dock Race. It just kind of depends on your goals. A lot of people are very happy in like the mid 600s. It'll be a very quick to sell if you want to get it back some of your money when you're done with it. I went the top mount route because I want to be able to shoot for more than that. Yeah, the plug and play is going to be better than Dorch on the MHD kit. The MHD Flex Fuel kit will be 100% plug and play. So I know that's why a lot of people were waiting for it. And I know that's why it sold out so fast, but it kind of is what it is. Events for the summer, I'm not sure yet. I know every fall I go to Euro District. It's in Louisville, Kentucky, and I lived in Louisville for a little while, so that's why I always go there. It's only like an hour and a half for me. But other events during the summer, I'll kind of have to play it by ear. I don't really travel a whole lot, but I would like to this year for sure. The oil weight that I use right now, I use 5W30, and during my next oil change this summer, I plan on switching to 0W30. I noticed immediately as soon as I went to 5W40, my oil took a lot longer to warm up compared to when I had 0W20. Like I said, I had not factory fill oil, but OEM oil changes being done up until like the middle of 2020. So with my E85 tune and stock turbo stuff, all that, I was pushing, 450 to 500 on 0W20, no issues. And I prefer having oil that gets up to temperature quick than, oil that's set up for like really hot, warm temperatures that I don't experience all the time. So I'm going to be switching to 0W30 this summer. Yeah, man. I mean, there's no shame in it. And I'm thinking about making like an oil change DIY and stuff. Like I just did the spark plug one. I don't feel bad about looking up a video. Like that's what it's for. Even if it's a simple process, the easiest ones are the ones that are the easiest to screw up. So yeah, I just looked up a video to make sure I knew. That's how I found out I didn't have the right socket for my oil filter. So I went and got that before I drained all my oil out and was stuck in my garage and not able to take my oil filter off. So those videos are useful, man. All right. So is MHD stage 2 E30 safe for stock fueling? The way that I feel about it is that it is 100% possible to make a tune that works with the stock fuel system on an ethanol mix. So that's really not where the problem lies. What happens is if you have a bad tune, it's not going to work regardless. So most people that I've seen running it are running it without an issue, but there are some people that are seeing fuel pressure dips, and there just needs to be a lot more fine tuning, in my opinion, on the off-the-shelf maps, because there's a battle to make them more aggressive. Everybody wants the most aggressive stage 2 or stage 2 plus, but that also makes it work for fewer people. It's an off-the-shelf map. It's supposed to work for a wide range of people and just be a safe tune. If you want to push it, get a custom tune. So unfortunately, sometimes people do experience fuel pressure dips with the stage 2 map that's designed for the stock fuel pump. So like always, flash it, check your mix, make sure everything's safe, and run logs. I know some people just run like E20 or E25 and do a couple pulls to make sure that their fuel pressure isn't dipping before they go all the way to E30. That works as well. You just might have some timing issues, which aren't necessarily better either. But just take your time with it, man. Or you can just skip that and get a custom tune and you won't have to worry about it. Why does the PCV go bad? So I do want to make an updated video on that too. I'm trying to get a hold on the valve cover so that I can like fully tear it down and show you guys everything that's going on in there. But basically that rubber diaphragm moves up and down as the car's running and as you go in and out of boost, and it just gets brittle and tears. That's really what it comes down to. I've had PCV issues on other cars as well, so it's not unique to our cars, but definitely turbo cars put the PCV system under more stress because now you're building boost, and so it's seeing a lot more pressure. And it just seems like for whatever reason, we've got a crappy diaphragm that just fails sometimes for no reason. So even if you're idling, what I've learned is that it can go up and down. Even if you're not in boost, it'll be oscillating, and that's when you can get into an issue where it tears. Piston number 6 died. Yeah, man, that's a really common issue. We are seeing a lot of people having failed pistons, and we're not 100% sure why they're failing, even on stock turbo setups. Some people have had injector issues and stuff that cause the pistons to fail, and it's definitely unfortunate. I feel your pain. On a TU pump, what can you do with the Flowmax kit? So check out my videos. I did one where I pushed the TU pump to the limit. Pretty much any turbo on the market can do the same thing. On an ethanol mix, my max horsepower that I made was 590 wheel horsepower. So I've seen people in the 600s. It just kind of depends on the turbo and the fuel that you're using. But that's like, a really perfect setup. It's not really typical. Most people are between 550 and 600. Power flex bushing inserts. Yeah, so I did show you guys probably like over a year ago that I got the rear subframe bushing inserts for power flex as well as my LSD. Of course, I still haven't installed it yet. I've been too busy with the other things. I do plan on installing it before this summer, but I'll get to it when I get to it. That's kind of the current status right now. It's on the back burner. So sorry it's been so long. Impact would be awesome. I am actually trying to make arrangements to get there, but I don't want to say that's a guarantee until I know for sure. So yeah, I would like to run there. The other event too here locally, Streetcar Takeover is coming to Cincinnati, so I do plan on participating in that. But yeah, I'm still just kind of playing it by ear. We'll see what happens this summer. Yeah, no problem, man. You're gonna enjoy that Doc Race kit for sure, especially with the manual transmission. It sounds amazing. You'll enjoy it. Performance goals this year for the 440. So some of you probably saw on my Instagram stories, I posted that I got a box from Bimmer Boy Performance, and it's sitting over here. But I am adding port injection, and I'm basically just trying to set myself up for flex fuel tuning. Now, because I still have an OEM clutch, not the stock clutch, but just a BMW clutch from a 550i, I'm still limited on how much power I can make. The same way that a lot of you ZF guys are worried about slipping your trans. I don't want my clutch to go out either. So my goals right now are not necessarily to make more power, but just to dial in flex fuel tuning so I can run full E85 without losing power. Because if I ran full E with just the Dort Stage 2, it would make less than it does on an ethanol mix. So the plans are to install port injection, install motive reflex, and then document the flex fuel process. And I'll make videos on all of that too. What's up? What's up? Let's see. So in the YouTube chat, best oil. So this is easy one. Anything between 0W20 and 5W30 meets the OEM requirement. It's like a LL01 FE. You can go up to 5W40, I believe, and that still meets the LL01 requirement, but it's not like the efficient oil. So different manuals say different things. Mine says I can add up to 1 quart. Some other manuals say that it's, safe to completely run it. I ran 5W40 and posted my oil analysis results last year without any issues. So yeah, pretty much anything between 0W20 and 5W40 works, but I definitely recommend starting with a 0W oil, whether it's 0W30, 0W20, or 0W40, just from my personal experience. When do I think the intake manifold is worth upgrading? So the biggest thing with the intake manifold for me is just reliability when running higher boost levels, because that's when you can crack the plastic intake. So for whatever reason, we cannot get like quality parts for our cars that can just support as much power as the engine, because the engine is very strong. But we had like charge pipe issues on other platforms and things like that. On our cars, it's the intake manifold, and I've seen some pictures of them completely obliterated. So I'm trying to keep my boost below 30 psi. That's what I'm doing to help make sure that my intake manifold lasts as long. If you want to run more than that, I definitely think you're on borrowed time. It depends on the turbo and things like that, but just generally speaking, if I plan on running more than 30 psi, I want a metal manifold to be able to handle that boost. But I don't really see a lot of people having IAT issues. The bigger intercooler is nice, but I don't think that's the bottleneck that most people are chasing. So for me, it's mostly about strength and just making sure the full system can handle higher boost levels. That's when I would upgrade my manifold. Let's see. Yeah, the PCV failures do happen a lot from people idling too long, which is like an hour, 45 minutes to an hour, maybe more. And then people hear it like squeal, and then a bunch of smoke comes out the exhaust, and that's usually the PCV failing. Can weak ignition coils cause timing corrections? They definitely can. It's just not very common. Typically, what I've seen is they either work or they don't. So I've had misfires with bad ignition coils, but not timing corrections. All right, so I've heard this before. The question is, somebody went from stage 2 to stage 2 plus, and they're not feeling a lot of difference. Honestly, I can't really say why, because in my experience, there was a very significant difference in going from stage 2 to stage 2 plus. Even I just had the TU pump installed. I just tried both maps to see how it felt. And even though my times weren't significantly improved on pump gas, I felt the extra torque and boost came on sooner. And then, of course, on an ethanol mix, it was much faster. So you'll have to look at your logs to see what else is going on. You might not be hitting your boost targets, or you might have some other issues. But again, logging tells you everything. That's the easiest way to tell what's wrong. So run some logs, take a look. You can send them to me if you need help looking at them, and we can go from there. Do I have an LSD? I do have one sitting in a box in the corner of my garage, so not on the car. Why not get RK AutoWorks manifold? I don't think I ever said that. It seems like a good option. I just haven't really seen any data from the newer intake manifolds yet. So it seems fine. People that have installed it say it's working fine. Let's see, Instagram chat. Adding a downpipe doesn't necessarily void your warranty, but I would suggest just swapping back to the stock downpipe if you're worried about it. That's super easy. Yeah, see, anything you do to your car can void your warranty. It depends on the dealership. That's 100% true. The dealer does what they want and reports what they want to the OEM, So if they see your downpipe and you've got an issue with your suspension or something, they can put that in the notes if they want to, or try to rationalize saying that that's an issue. But most dealerships wouldn't, at least in my experience. It just really depends. I'm currently on stage 2 plus. Will I see a big difference changing to a bigger turbo without E85 or another tune? All right, so yeah, well, let's just talk about turbos, because I made that video on Friday about basically making more power on 93 octane. In my experience, running a big turbo on pump gas makes more power than running stock turbo on an ethanol mix, even with the Dort Stage 2 or whatever you can throw at it, just because the stock turbo gets choked up. And if you're struggling to make power on your big turbo setup, it's either like got another issue, like maybe you're having a boost leak or timing corrections or something else due to your gas quality, or your ethanol tune was pushing the limits. In my experience, even on my fully 85 tune, or comparing it to like an E30 off the shelf map, my car was about, I think, like a half second faster on the 60 to 130 and 100 to 200 times on pump gas with my Doc Race kit. And everybody that I see running a Pure or a Flowmax or anything else on 93 octane, they're able to make good power too. I think we just posted up like somebody made a 10.9 quarter mile on a Flowmax in like a 340i or something, or maybe a 540i. So, I mean, you're able to get into the 10s on pump gas with a hybrid turbo. You're not going to be able to do that on a stock turbo without ethanol. So that's why I say if you just have pump gas, it's really not that much of a limitation. You just need to upgrade your turbo and you'll make the power. And it's faster than the stock turbo for sure if you have everything dialed in. But that's just my experience and a bunch of other people's experience. Your mileage may vary. Let's see. I think we already talked about oil weight. Yeah, so you're saying use 0W20 and you're considering switching to 0W30. Keep in mind the weight of your oil is dependent on your oil temperature. And probably one of the biggest misconceptions I see people say is like, in the summer, I run higher weight oil because it's hotter outside. And that doesn't really affect how your engine is running. And I think Keys just released a video where they were actually talking to one of the engineers at Liqui-Moly, and he said the same thing. You know, the oil weight is dependent on your engine design and what your car is designed to run with, not the climate conditions or other issues. If you're having a problem where your oil temperature is going up, even if it's like a track scenario or you just have like really hot climate, it's better to upgrade your oil system, get better coolers to bring the oil temperature down instead of just trying to compensate with it by using heavier oil. That's how I feel about it. So tunes, turbos, like whatever you're running, it doesn't necessarily change the recommended oil weight. So I'm just trying different oils because I'm annoying and I like testing stuff and getting my own data. That's it. So I had 5W40. Now I'm running 5W30, and I'm telling you, I already plan on switching to 0W30. After that, I might switch again. Let's see. Switching back to the YouTube chat. Sorry, guys. Both chats are moving pretty quick, so I'm trying to keep up with both of them. I have a 440i, catless intake exhaust, 91 octane. Should I do a hybrid upgrade, an MHD stage 2, or high pressure fuel pump? So if you only have 91 octane available, your fuel pump is not going to be as useful with a hybrid turbo. It's going to run out of steam very quickly. Like you'll probably be in the 450 range, maybe 500 if like you're able to really push it. But typically when people say they only have 91 octane, that's because they live in an area where the gas is kind of poor quality. So in my opinion, I mean, you can definitely upgrade. It'll make more power than the stock turbo would, but you'll have to kind of play it by ear to see where the limits are. I know on my car, I was able to run pump gas up to like 23 to 24 PSI. I still had good clean timing and no issues, but with 91 octane, it's going to be worse. Oh, so what would my upgrade be? So, yeah, like I said, I'm adding port injection, but my limitation right now is my clutch. And I would need to upgrade my clutch in order to support more horsepower and torque if I wanted to run more boost. So, basically, I'd be looking at like a spec clutch. I know a lot of people are trying out the Motive twin disc. I'm just not interested in that right now. It's louder, drivability is worse, you know, everything about it kind of goes away from how I enjoy driving the car. So I don't really plan on upgrading my clutch yet. Who knows? That might change this summer when I'm completely annoyed and want to run faster times. But for now, I'm satisfied. If your wastegate isn't calibrated, will it throw a CEL? Yes. So the wastegate actually calibrates itself. All you're doing is adjusting it in a range where it can read the positions. So you can't, it's not going to be like out of calibration, but you can adjust it in a position where it can't tell whether it's closed or open. And if that happens, then it'll throw a check engine light. But even if it's off a little bit from like the perfect like center point, it can calibrate itself. What's going on with the Flowmax arguments in the group? So I talked about this before. You know, I don't hate Sean, but we obviously disagree on a lot of things. I'm going to talk about this in another video too, but long story short, there are a lot of just assumptions that people make when they look at turbos and horsepower levels and things like that. If you look at a turbo, like any Garrett turbo, precision turbo, whatever, it gives you a horsepower rating. And that horsepower rating is not guaranteed. It's not perfect. It's simply an assumption. So what they do is they look at the flow rate of the turbo, how much air the wheel can flow, and they use that as a part of the calculation to determine how much horsepower it can make. But we all know different amounts of fuel can make different horsepower. If you use the same turbo on different platforms, it can make different amounts of horsepower. So it's going to vary. And the biggest thing that we've got going for the last like year or so is people arguing about dyno jet figures, because the dyno jet is basically one of the biggest standards in, measuring your car's horsepower. And if you look back, 10 years or whatever, you can see like E92 M3s and all these other cars that get on the dyno and they read exactly what you expect. They might read like 340 or 350 at the wheels. But then when you start getting up to modern BMWs and even like Volkswagens and stuff, this isn't just a BMW thing. Like they start showing that they're underrated. So a lot of people started losing trust in the dyno because a car that's making 320 horsepower at the crank on its spec sheet shouldn't be able to make 320 or 330 at the wheels. So that's his hang up. He's saying based on how much flow he thinks the turbo can make and the rating for the turbo, that the dyno jets aren't accurate, even though that wasn't an issue, like I said, 10 years ago when everybody saw cars making what they typically expected on dyno jets. So I still trust dyno jets. I feel like a modern engine with, optimized lubrication and lightweight components and all the other things that make it more efficient is going to read higher than older cars did. And you can't use those old, previous things that we used to assume on modern cars. It just doesn't work. So it is what it is. I mean, at the end of the day, there are so many different ways your cars can make power and perform well. It's not really the end of the day. It is what it is. But yeah, we'll talk about dynos in another video too. What injectors do I recommend? 750 is perfect, man. 750 is good. 550 is going to work, but you might run out quickly depending on the turbo that you have. 750 should cover pretty much what kind of goals anybody's aiming for. So if you're getting PI, 750 is good. Would I recommend LSD for all-wheel drive? I think it's worth it. I think the biggest issue is a lot of people assume that it'll give you better quarter mile times, and that's not what it's designed for. So if all you do is straight line racing, it might feel incrementally better, but don't expect it to be like a life-changing decision. But if you enjoy handling, turns, making the car lean and testing the limits of your tires, then yeah, LSD is definitely worth it. And I got the BMW one because the Wave Track one's more expensive and a more intensive installation process. All right, let's see you back in chat. What's up, everybody? What size is my garage? Okay, so I've got a 3-car garage and it's got 3 separate bays. So that's why it looks so big. It's basically a 3.5 car garage. So here, I'll show on the chat. I've got my X5, my car, my wife's car, and then in front of the X5, I have my project car. So yeah, I basically got 3 separate doors, 3 separate bays. So all the cars have plenty of space. And then I have an extension on this side so that I kind of shoehorn my project car back there to give me more space. I got very fortunate. That's pretty much the main reason I got this house. Yep, I'm streaming on YouTube as well. Definitely have more engagement on YouTube this go around than I did last time. So appreciate everybody that's logging on. Yeah, no problem, man. Everybody that says thank you. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm just having fun. I'm just sharing information. I used to post this stuff on Bimmer Post for anybody that used to follow me on there. And I post these long, drawn-out essays, and I know none of you enjoyed reading it. So it seems like the videos go a lot better. So thanks a lot for the support, too. Please don't use the double gulp Cokes. Noted. No more Slurpees. Ooh, so maintenance timing. So I'll make a video on this as well. Obviously, I've got a backlog of videos to post since I keep saying that. I change my oil once a year in all of my cars. I use full synthetic in all of my cars, and I use liquid moly in all of my cars. That doesn't mean that it's the best or that it works for everybody, but because of my driving style and how many miles I put on the car and everything that plays into it, it works well for me. So I do one oil change a year in all of my cars. If you drive a lot, then you'll probably want to do it more often. I definitely, obviously, wouldn't go past BMW's recommendation. If you're running high ethanol content, you probably want to cut it down a little bit as well. At least do it by like 6,000 or 7,000 miles. Don't go the full 10K or 12K, whatever it recommends. But nothing beats getting your own data, man. Do your oil change, send your data out for analysis, and see what they say. That'll be anything that I can just guess for you. I promise. Do you need an LSD to maximize grip? So again, an LSD will give a slight improvement, but remember, an LSD isn't about just traction, right? It's about traction bias between two tires. So if you're on a drag strip and one tire doesn't have significantly less grip than the other, an LSD isn't going to give you a significant amount of improvement. So that's really what it comes down to. When you're turning and the car is leaning, one tire has a lot less grip than the other tire, and that's where an LSD really comes into play. But if you have a rear-wheel drive car and you're on a drag strip with good prep, everything's even, there's no weird ruts or anything that you have to worry about, a tire will go way farther than an LSD. Get a good drag setup, like a drag tire setup, and that'll completely change how the car performs. Is XHP Stage 3 safe? I think so. Everybody that I've seen using it has good luck with it. Obviously, I haven't tried it myself, but there are so many different transmission tunes for ZFs and dual clutches, across the board, that I have yet to see one that actually ruins cars, to be honest. So I wouldn't feel too bad about it. The ZF's very strong, and especially a lot of people are jumping straight to Stage 3 on like a stock turbo tune. The car isn't even stressing at that point, so I don't feel like Stage 3 does that much damage. Flomax doesn't seem to make 500 on pump. Saw some guy make 475. Again, I don't reference one guy. I'm looking across the board, and that's how I basically make my analysis or understanding of how things work. There's always going to be somebody on the low end. There's always going to be somebody on the high end. It is what it is. But generally speaking, it definitely should make over 500 on pump gas. I trust 60 to 130 times. That's cool too. So again, when we posted up 60 to 130 and 100 to 200 times in the group, Sean didn't agree with that. Sean wanted quarter mile times. That was the only thing that he felt like was important and a true representation of, the overall performance of a car. That's fine, but my car's rear-wheel drive, 6-speed manual. I'm never going to put a drag slick on it, or I don't plan on it. So my car's never going to perform in the quarter mile. So what do I do? You know what I mean? That's kind of how I look at it. Everybody has different things that they prefer or they trust. I mostly do roller racing and back road driving, so I'm more concerned about how a car pulls when I'm already at speed, not just getting going from a stop. So, everybody cares about something different. That's why we all have different cars, and we're all able to build them differently. It's really not the end of the world. So, yeah, it is what it is. Do I think the 2022 M340 will ever be unlocked? Absolutely. A lot of you guys don't realize this, but on the Gen 1 B58, we waited 4 years. The Gen 1 B58 came out in 2015, and it wasn't unlocked until 2019. So this isn't out of the ordinary. We've been waiting 2 years now, and everybody's working on it. I guarantee you. It's going to take some time. All right, let's see. Back in the Instagram chat. I just tuned my car on 93, but on startup it stalls. You'll have to take a look at that. I know there are some things like enrichment tables or whatever to help the car start a little bit better, especially if you have an ethanol mix. Higher ethanol mixes are difficult to start with. I haven't heard of that on pump gas though, so just have your tuner take a look at those tables. Thoughts on the CSF manifold? I know a lot of people are running it without an issue. Like the Titan car is running it, and that car is very fast. So, I mean, it seems like a good kit. For stuff like this, I do like to wait for more people to post data because it's still pretty new. But as far as I see, it's looking pretty good. Keeping an eye on trans temp. How hot is too hot? Oh, that's a good question. I think it does really depend. Oil temperatures do get a lot hotter than like coolant temperatures in the car. It's really hard to say. I would definitely keep an eye on how it performs like when you're daily driving and see how stable it is when you're on the track. And if you're seeing really big spikes or it's staying elevated for longer, that's when you know you want to upgrade your cooling. Intakes with hybrid turbos. So the biggest thing to consider when you're upgrading your intake is that it's not really adding power, right? It might help increase your spool, which can increase your power band, but you're not going to typically see a significant improvement in power, especially with how our cars are tuned. I know a lot of people look at intake on my car and they're like, oh, it's sucking out power. You're not going to be able to spool and all this stuff. But obviously I've shown like I don't have any issues with it. So bigger filters just really help free up the turbo to spool quicker. And if you're hitting the limits of wastegate duty cycle, then a bigger filter can typically give you more headroom. So if you've maxed out your turbo and you're at like 25 PSI or something, upgrading your intake will probably lower the duty cycle and allow you to run more boost. So until you hit that as an actual bottleneck, I don't see an intake being a significant improvement. It does sound cool. It helps you spool faster and can help in other aspects of performance, but just from making power, I don't really see that being a big thing. Again, just personal opinion. No, I wasn't at Orlando, man. Sorry. I know a lot of people asked me if I was going. When racing, okay, so the question is, when I'm racing, go to shift, does my purse get in the way? I haven't actually had that issue because I have like a little bar, like the clothes hanger, and that's where I hang my purse. So it doesn't get in the way of shifting. It's usually my boyfriend when I'm trying to shift, then I might get stopped up, but it just depends. I guess he's assuming the manufacturers are underrating the power. Absolutely. I mean, really, that's what the thing is. I don't get it. He is a turbo manufacturer. He's going to have his own opinions and preferred way of doing things. But the competition is pretty universal in a different aspect of thinking, So everybody's going to feel a certain way. Again, I talked to Sean. I have no problem telling people that the Flomax is an extremely good and well-valued turbo. We just have different opinions. And I disagree with a lot of people. It doesn't mean I hate you. So I don't really feel like any hard feelings with Sean. But you will see us argue if you follow us online. All right. Thanks for everybody for joining. We got some good engagement. Dual jet meth injection. I don't like it. Don't do it. I don't care how many jets you're installing. If it's at one point in the car and not at the ports, don't do it. I'm installing a big boost kit. Do I remove the O-ring gaskets from the engine and just use the metal gasket only? I'm not sure what you mean, man. If you're talking about for the exhaust manifold, it should just be a metal gasket. What's up, Bimmer boy? What's up, Mig? No problem. Thanks for the support. All right, back to YouTube. So can the Dorch Stage 2 make 700 wheel? I do think so. I honestly think it's extremely on the edge, but it's definitely possible. I've seen 700 wheel dyno from a spool FX 180. So it's definitely possible DI only. And it's easiest to do that on an ethanol mix. The biggest issue, of course, is making sure you have a turbo that can support that much horsepower. And basically, you're going to be balancing the limit of fuel literally all the way to redline. So it's possible, but it's probably not the safest thing to do. Should I worry about overboost? I mean, everybody should worry about overboost. Like that's a very common concern. Even back to the JB4 days, we've had throttle closure issues and things like that. It's all in the tune. So log it, make sure everything's working how it should. And that's how you know that it's working well. I've been really fortunate and I've never had issues with off-the-shelf maps, but I do get feedback from other people that have had issues, and it depends, man. Always log your car, no matter what tune you're flashing, run some logs, because that's usually what happens. I hear somebody say they flashed their car, went out, they were driving to work and they floored it and it backfired, or it went into lip mode or something happened, but they don't have any logs or any tests to know like how the car is performing. So you're basically running blind. Wearing my B58 shirt. Appreciate it, man. I've got my VinWiki shirt supporting all of us speeders out there. When do you have to upgrade your low pressure fuel pump? So if you're running PI, I'm typically seeing people do that when they're hitting the limits of, like I said, a Dorch Stage 2 or an FX 180. If you're putting PI on the car, a low pressure fuel pump is going to kind of go hand in hand. So if you're approaching the limits of DI only, PI and a low pressure fuel pump pretty much would go on at the same time. Now, if you're not pushing the limits of it, like if you only have a TU pump, then you will have a little bit of room, but definitely once you put like 650, 700 plus through PI, especially if you're trying to run full E, a low pressure fuel pump is going to be key. Is the B58 hype over? Never. That's never going to happen. The B58 isn't going anywhere. I guarantee you, like after the TU, we're going to have a TU2. We're going to have an S58 TU. Like this is the new modular system that BMW is going to be using. They might start adding, you know, hybrid integration and all these other things in the future just for emissions or whatever. But I think the B58 is going to be here long term. Like look at Volkswagen. The TSI is in everything. They started making the TSI back in what, 2008? And now it's almost 12, 13 years later, and they're still making a Gen 2 and Gen 3 TSI. I think the B58 is going to be the same way for BMW. Do I have any opinions on the BM3 maps? So unfortunately, I haven't ran an off-the-shelf tune for like over a year. But like I said, it's been hit or miss. Different people post logs and have different results. Just log it and you'll know for sure if it's working well with your car. A lot of people that I know running like the E30 and E50 maps are having no issues. It's actually mostly people running pump gas maps that seem to be having issues. How much power can the stock gearbox manage? So I made a video on this. It's usually around like 650 foot-pounds, I think, that it begins to start slipping, like 630 to 650. G35 or 68. I prefer Garrett's. I'm not a fan of precision turbos. I'll appreciate that, Nathan. Appreciate the support, man. So your question, I have a 2016 340i with a high flow downpipe. What horsepower and torque? So usually that's around like 400 to 420 horsepower and maybe like 460-ish foot-pounds if you're trying to estimate. And again, DynoJet figures because that's what I use and that's what I trust. With JB4, can I run port in a bigger turbo? With a back-end flash, you can do a lot of things with JB4. The biggest issue with JB4 is that it is a reactive tune. So it doesn't like dial in everything like a regular flash tune would. It's going to react based on signals that it receives. So you'll just have to really pay attention to it. But I think Terry and Pyam, they're doing a lot of custom tuning upgrade stuff for like the S58 cars, and all they have is a JB4. They don't have flash tunes. Flomax on off-the-shelf versus custom tune, is there a big difference? So I saw a little bit of a difference on mine. I don't have a Flomax, obviously, but on my car, I ran the Stage 2 Plus, posted up all the draggy stuff last year, and then I did a custom tune, and we ran a little more boost. It was a little bit faster. Not life-changing, but it was definitely safer. We dialed in fueling so that my fuel trims were much better. The car responded much better, and just everything in the log was much cleaner compared to running an off-the-shelf map. So it's kind of up to you. I know a lot of people have run off the shelf maps for a long time without issues, but for the actual, safest long-term tune, a custom tune is always best. Let's see. Yeah, Bimmer Boy is commenting too. Do I think port meth on M1 is able to make the same power as E85? Yes. The biggest issue with M1 is that you're going to be constantly checking your tank. You know what I mean? Because when you're pushing that much, especially through port, you're going to run through it really quickly. And unless you have a big tank, it's just kind of a risk. So make sure you have like a level sensor or something that can tell you when you need to top up again. That's the only thing I don't like about meth. Yeah, you've been driving on off the shelf and it feels quick already. I felt the same way, man. And I was beating on my car. I mean, as soon as I got my turbo installed, I went and flashed the Stage 2 Plus E30 map and ran some logs, and I saw that it was fine. I was racing my friends. I was driving, and I didn't really care while I was waiting for my custom tune to get dialed in. So it works. A lot of people are making it work. The car is going to be much quicker on off the shelf, especially on boot mode. I think some of the other tuning platforms might have a slightly different strategy, but you can see on boot mode, like the stock turbo tapers off and it struggles to hit like the boost target and the higher RPM, and your bigger turbo is going to fill all of that up. You'll be running way harder on the top end. So a custom tune will be better and safer, but the car does boogie on an off the shelf map. My dual high pressure fuel pump setup, can it help you run nines? So it definitely can. The only problem is the nines are going to be like up here while you're sleeping. But if you don't care about that and you don't mind just sharing information online without any actual slips and stuff, it works really well. I've actually already told my friends I'm running nines, so highly recommended. All right, when am I going to sell my TU? So I don't have any of my fuel pumps anymore, guys. I only have the stock high pressure fuel pump left. So the TU is gone. The Dorch was returned after I was done testing it. I told them that I wanted to test the Dorch Stage 1 and Stage 2 back to back, and they agreed to help me out to make that video. So I tested the Dorch Stage 1, sent it back, and then got the Stage 2 and installed that. And then that's what I've been running. But yeah, I might have plans for my stock pump too, so it's not going anywhere yet. I'm wondering if, since it's not really worth anything, it's like, should I try to do a teardown or like cut it open or something? Like, I don't know. I feel like that might be a cool video, but I got to make up my mind to commit to that. Is it normal to have timing corrections? Absolutely. And something else a lot of people don't consider, but you guys should try it out, especially if you have the stock turbo. Flash your stock tune and run a log. See how the car runs completely stock. And that'll really open your eyes up, because a lot of the things that we argue about and say are like these huge issues are still existent in the stock tune as well. You're going to see timing corrections and different amounts of timing pool depending on the fuel quality. That's why the car has that capability, to be able to adjust for different conditions and things like that. But it's going to happen from time to time. Usually I don't see it as being an issue unless it's over 3 degrees and it's not like the same cylinder every single time. So cylinder ones, it's just like always the problem child. But if like your cylinder 4 is always pulling 6 degrees, or like all the other cylinders are hitting 10 degrees and cylinder 4 is only hitting 3, that's when I'd begin to investigate if something was an issue. But yeah, in a perfect scenario, timing corrections would be 0 across all cylinders. I just didn't see until I got a custom tune, to be completely honest. I never had an off-the-shelf map that was always showing 0 corrections. ZF and the Gen 2s, are they the same regarding torque limits? As far as I'm aware, yes. It's an HP 51 instead of an HP 50. So still kind of the same family, just, slight upgrades and modifications internally. But I believe the torque limits are the same. Is my VMAX unlocked? Yes. So obviously, you can remove the speed limiter with pretty much any tune. That's nothing crazy, but a lot of people saw like some of my top speed runs and they were asking me how I was able to see more than 160 miles an hour. My car's always done that. But keep in mind, it came from the factory with the heads-up display and the digital dash. So I don't know if some combination of that with the M Sport or whatever is what allows it. And maybe like people that are retrofitting it aren't able to get it to work. I don't know. But if I hit 170, like in that video I posted on TikTok, I hit 178 or something, and it showed in the heads-up display. So I didn't do anything to make that happen. So switching to stage 2 wasn't worth it. So this is an opinion that I have that not a lot of people agree with. But stage 2 compared to stage 1 is not worth it. That's just how I feel. And when I did my downpipe, I did my fuel pump at the same time. I ran stage 2 as well as stage 2 plus, 93 as well as E30. Again, just because I'm annoying and I like testing stuff. But going from stage 1 to stage 2 wasn't a significant improvement. And I feel like stage 1 is absolutely the best bang for buck no matter what. And if you want to go up from that, just get a fuel pump and downpipe and go stage 2 plus. But when I just had the stage 2 tune compared to stage 1, the car spooled a little bit faster. I mean, that was about it. And even on the dynos, when they show the dyno gains, it's only like 15 horsepower or so. So it's not really significant compared to if you go to stage 2 plus, you can get in another like 25 to 30. So that's just how I feel. I mean, even with just a downpipe, you get most of the gains because the car will spool quicker and all that will happen already. In my opinion, the stage 2 tune mostly just dials in fueling to help make sure, you know, it's as safe as possible. And of course, it hides the check engine light. What do I think is causing the recent injector failure? I think it's just random, man. And again, I mean, I've had other platforms, I've modified other cars. On my Volkswagen, that was an issue that some people had with injector failures. The only difference with our cars is it wasn't taking out engines, right? If you have an injector failure and your car is smoking or it's misfiring or something, you can fix it. The way that it just takes out engines on our cars, I don't think is normal. And I think that something else is going on. That's why I mentioned in my injector video, like I knew some people that replaced their injectors and their compression came back, which kind of indicated that either the seals were bad or something else was going on that was giving a false reading for low compression, you know, and they didn't really have any damage. So I don't know, man. As far as the engine failures, I kind of have some opinions about that. I'm still trying to gather more information and just watch what happens and go from there. But injector failures, that's not an uncommon thing, especially on direct injection engines. And as far as when to replace them, I'm not replacing mine as preventative maintenance. I was planning on making a video, just a DIY on how to replace it, but I don't know when that's going to happen. It's not really a priority for me right now, just because I have a lot of other stuff to talk about. But I don't plan on replacing mine. I don't like replacing things that aren't broken because that's the easiest way to introduce an issue to your car. You know what I mean? So it just kind of depends, but we'll see. Who was my tuner? So I'm with Odin Tuned right now. I've also had an F80 Paul tune in the past. I had my stock turbo custom tune was with F80 Paul. I've also done tuning with Marin Tuned, but after I moved up, I ended up switching to Odin Tuned. So I've had 3 different tuners. My power band is great. If you look at my dyno, you can see that the curve is pretty flat and then it begins to drop off towards red line just because, like I said, we don't want to run more boost. So we're stopping around like 29 PSI on my ethanol mix. But I mean, it's a pretty broad power band. It makes peak horsepower across maybe like 500 RPM. And in order to really ramp that up, like I said, I would need to upgrade my clutch so I can make more torque sooner. And that would make my power band wider. But you don't hear anybody like in a Corvette saying that their power band sucks. You know what I mean? If you have a flat torque curve and your power is pulling all the way up to red line, it feels great. So a wider power band doesn't necessarily make the car feel faster. You know, a lot of times that's where the numbers show a lot more than what the dyno would show. But yeah, I mean, I have no issues with the car. We're maximizing my setup, and that's what's important to me. It's safe and within the limits of, you know, the next weakest link. Would increasing the gap help with timing corrections? So potentially it could, probably not. The main reason why I don't recommend gapping plugs is, again, because you're messing with something that isn't broken. So you can introduce an issue. If you damage, the tip or anything, you can cause a problem. Some of you saw when Todd Wrigley blew his engine, it was because the tip of his spark plug fell into the engine and basically broke his piston. And that's something that can happen from gapping your plugs over and over. It makes it weaker. So if you've already gapped your plugs down to 0.022, I don't typically recommend trying to open the gap back up. I would just get new plugs if you want to run a larger gap. But I've tried a lot of different gaps with my stock turbo and my big turbo on pump gas and on ethanol. It didn't make a significant difference in timing. The only thing that made an improvement in timing was increasing the octane. So again, if you only have a couple corrections, like between 1.5 and 3 degrees on individual cylinders, I wouldn't lose sleep over it. It's going to happen. If you look at the build sheet, it tells you your speed limit increase. Okay, yeah, I did have that. When I came from the factory, I had the 155 mile an hour limit, not the 130 or whatever. I think it came with the M Sport package. Oh, you meant stage 2 high pressure fuel pump. So I went on a whole rant about stage 2 tunes for no reason. So for the stage 2 high pressure fuel pump, it's definitely worth it with a big turbo. With the stock turbo, the biggest improvement is that you're going to be able to make more torque sooner. So it'll help you make faster, 60 foots and 0 to 60 times, but it won't necessarily support more power because the TU pump can support more power than the stock turbo can make. So in my opinion, it just kind of depends on what you're looking for. If you're mostly doing roll racing, I don't see a Dorch pump making a big difference because you're already up in the power band. So yeah, and I made a video comparing like the TU pump and the Dorch Stage 1 and Dorch Stage 2, and I explained that even the TU and the Dorch Stage 1 are not significantly different, and especially with how cheap the TUs are, like it's kind of a no-brainer, So I don't feel like going up to a Dorch Stage 2 and spending whatever it's like $1,600 or $1,800 for a Stage 2 pump just to get slightly faster times. For me, it's not worth it, but it's up to you guys. Is Stage 1 a big improvement over the MPPSK? It is going to be a noticeable difference if you run ethanol. If you're running 91, absolutely not. If you're running 93, it'll be a slight improvement. So if you already have the M Performance Power and Sound Kit, either wait until you have ethanol to run Stage 1 E30 or just get a fuel pump and wait for Stage 2 Plus. If I'd be more than happy with the M Performance kit, would I still run a tune like Stage 1? Yeah. When I got the car, my original plan was basically to push the stock setup as much as I could go. And I really wanted like a Stage 1 full E85 tune. That's what I was looking for because I didn't even want to swap my downpipe. I just wanted to run full E85 and just enjoy the car. And eventually I learned that running an ethanol mix makes more power and it wasn't that difficult for me. So I ran Stage 1 E30 for like over a year. And then, I ended up installing my fuel pump. So some of you guys saw when I did that and people don't realize that now. But when I installed the TU pump, there really wasn't any information about it. I just did it for research purposes because some people thought that it might fit. Some people thought it might work. Some people thought it might blow up my car. So I went ahead and just bought one and installed it. But now, of course, it's really common and well known to work. Oh, I'm about to run out of time on Instagram. It says I have 10 seconds left. I might have to start this over. Save your questions if I haven't answered it already. Sorry. Instagram just came up with a timer and it's like shutting down. Am I running for president? Yes. Sorry, guys. We'll be back. I don't know what happened. I didn't know that happened on Instagram. I guess it's been an hour. Yeah, it's been an hour, so it only lets me live stream for an hour at a time. It didn't used to do that. That's very strange. I had no idea that would work. or that would happen, I guess. Let's see. Have I heard of anyone cleaning their valves? No, I haven't, which is actually really funny. We were talking about that too. But if you run a catch can on our cars, you're not going to see it fill up very quickly. And it just seems like our PCV system works very efficiently. And it's another part of just saying that the B58 is an extremely efficient engine. That's why it makes a lot of power with similar mods compared to other engines. And it has, tight clearances and all of that. So it just runs really well. And I think it was Trevor was the one that I saw. He was at maybe 60 or 80,000 miles when he took off his intake manifold and checked the valves, and they were pretty clean. So I don't feel like it's a really big issue with our cars. You can even check your charge pipe, and it's not really coated in oil like older direct injection engine cars would have. So when will the BBK upgrade come out? So it will come out soon. I have it on my car. I haven't done a lot of testing with it. I just kind of tested the brake pedal to make sure it felt good. So I'm doing a little bit of that, waiting for the kids to come in, and then I'll post up a video with the information and cost and all that stuff. The TU pump for $300. Yeah, so I thought I got mine for a steal. I got it for, I think, $650, and then I sold it for $600. But when I bought it, they were like $1,000 to $1,200. And now it's like some people are selling them for $300 new. That's crazy. It's only been, 2 years? So, yeah, definitely. I kind of figured as more TUs came on the market and more people were like wrecking their cars and having them in junkyards and stuff, it would become cheaper. How destructive are flame tunes? So the biggest issue with that, of course, is just blowing out your turbo. You're going to have flames going through your turbo and through the entire exhaust. So if you have a good turbo that you like, I wouldn't do it. If you have a downpipe with a cat in it that you like, I definitely wouldn't do it. Is VS Stage 3 any good? Yeah, it seems like it's pretty good. I think it's probably a little bit more limited than low-pressure fuel pumps that have an external pump, because if I'm thinking correctly, the Vader one is another in-tank pump. But, yeah, I mean, it works fine. What oil weight should I run? You don't run oil. I saw you over the weekend. You were filling your car with tequila. Is 5W40 safe? No, not anymore. I tried it once, and after that, it doesn't work. Let's see. Yeah, man. If you only have pump gas, definitely just go straight to stage 2. And it's kind of unfortunate because a lot of people got the M Performance tunes when that was the only option we had. Like I said, there were years when the B58 DMEs weren't unlocked. So if you wanted a flash tune, you got the MPPSK. And then when boot mode and MHD came out and people flashed stage 1, they're like, this doesn't feel like anything. And so, it kind of sucked because they weren't aware that it was basically maxing out your setup on 91 octane. But yeah, stage 2 plus is the move. I appreciate that, Jacob. Thank you. I did not even know that was a thing. See, that just shows I don't know how YouTube works. Thank you guys for sending that. I appreciate that a lot. Let's see, camber plates video coming soon. Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out how I want to do that. I've had my camber plates on my car for a while, and I'm going to be doing a video on alignments and suspension setups. So it probably won't be just on camber plates because, like I said, I don't really need to install one. I already have one, but I can talk about setting it up. No, I don't have the LSD on the car yet. Sorry, guys. Oh, okay. So if you're going to full E85, then a Dodge Stage 2 will prevent you from running out of power. I guess let's put it that way. With my TU pump, when I ran full E85, we pushed it pretty hard to get 480 wheel. And with a Dodge Stage 2, you can make that a lot easier, a lot safer with richer mixes, and you can even run higher boost levels. We ran a lot of timing to set that up, and it worked fine. I didn't have any issues with it, but it'll just be easier and safer with the Dodge Stage 2. So yeah, if you want to run fully 85, then a Dodge Stage 2 is the move. Let's see. Tequila guy again. Can I run stage 2 plus without a high pressure fuel pump? You definitely can. And then you won't have any clutches either after that. Front mount intake, would I recommend it? So I'm not a big front mount person, just in general. I just don't see the hype behind it. I'm not even really an aftermarket intake person. I ran the stock intake all the way up until I got my big turbo kit. So, it's really just personal preference. I think all of them are pretty much the same. The Cobb one might be the least invasive, but I still think it requires modifying the V brace in order for it to fit because the filter's right there. So, yeah, I mean, you just kind of got to let that dream go, I think, honestly. It's not going to be the end of the world. It's not going to make the car just twist like a pretzel or something. So you got to sacrifice it, man. Okay, so this is a good question. I'm going to make a video on tires too, but the question is, what tires am I using to keep up with my power? And the short answer is my tires don't keep up with my power, and I don't care. I picked my tires specifically because they are a 200 tread wear, basically good performing, all-around tire for handling in the summer. I run Hankook RS4s, so you'll see a lot of people using those for autocross, as well as track days. But it's not a drag tire. It's never going to hook in first gear. It's probably never going to hook in second gear either. And I'm just not really worried about it. I'm willing to sacrifice grip on the low end for all-around performance, handling when it rains, not feeling like I'm going to spin off of the road, and just having, the characteristics that I want in the car. Even if I did get an actual radial setup, that's the kind of thing that I would put on the car for a race and then take it right back off. So if you want a daily, 600, 700 horsepower, the car's going to spin sometimes. It is what it is. But if you want something like a good setup for the track, get some R-comps or get some radials and run them when you're actually racing. That's my recommendation. Should I drink more water? You look like you drank a lot of water over the weekend, man. I mean, I didn't want to say anything, but you might need to back off a little bit. That was a pretty strong stream. Power goal of 550 to 600. Should I get the Ross Race kit, or should I just keep replacing the diaphragm? I am a big fan of the Ross Race kit. He is a sponsor for the channel. But I was looking at getting something like that when my PCV failed. That's basically what I was looking at. If you don't want to have to deal with it, then, you can just replace it now. But I think just replacing the PCV diaphragm over and over is putting a Band-Aid on the issue, just personally speaking. And the situation that you're in with a bad diaphragm and shoving all that oil through the engine and having smoke come out the exhaust is not what you want. That's not really safe and not what you want to drive on. So if I can do something to prevent that, like deleting it with the Ross Race kit, I'm going to do that. So that's why I went that route. What RPM do I shift at? So it's going to depend. It's going to be different for different people because I have a big turbo setup and my car is a 6-speed manual with pretty long gearing. I literally shift right at redline. If you guys look at my draggy video that I posted up, you can see it actually goes past redline a little bit. It almost hit 7,500 RPM just because I was trying to squeeze every last ounce out of it. If you have a stock turbo, and especially if you have a ZF8, it usually is a little bit faster if you shift around 6,000, maybe 6,500, because you got a lot of torque down low that you can shift into, and that'll get you pulling harder after the shift. Wish the used market would drop some. I don't know when it will, man. And I've got a lot of opinions on that too, because I know people see the values of cars going up and they're like, one day this bubble's going to pop. What's going to pop it? You know what I mean? If people are already willing to pay this much for cars, I don't know that it's going to change very much. I know when demand goes down, or when I guess the supply goes up, so there's not as big of a demand for cars, people aren't struggling to find cars. It might fluctuate a little bit, but I wouldn't expect it to drop back to where it was. I think we're kind of where we are now. That's just how inflation works. Nothing wrong with removing the brace, just looks ugly. I agree. Yeah, for me, I mean, I obviously still have my brace. I don't plan on removing it, but it's not the end of the world if you do for, you know, your little front mount flex. Thoughts on staying on BM3 for the guys who plan on reflex? We'll see. Can I put pure meth in my windshield washer tank on a hot day? Yes. For a pure 800, what else will I need for fueling? Right now, all I've got is a TU. It just depends on your horsepower, man, or on your horsepower goals. So figure out what you want to do with the car, how fast you want it to be, and that's how you're going to have to build it. But at that point, the TU pump is going to be your limiting factor. What I think sometimes makes the most sense is tuning with your TU, seeing how it feels, and if you want more, upgrade. But you can't really guess, how it works. Because I've got a lot of people that are mad that their car doesn't hook. They've got their all-season tires on, and it's just spinning through fifth gear, and they're all upset. I mean, then don't shoot for moon boost. Maybe a TU is enough in that scenario. It just it's something that you're going to have to decide for yourself. So, all right, back to YouTube. What's my opinion on a diff brace? So I don't have one of those. And I was actually just talking about this in one of my group chats because wheel hop is a pretty common issue with certain wheel and tire setups and depending on the amount of grip you have. I have not had that issue. And like I said, the wheels that I have, if I do a pull in first gear, second gear, it's going to spin. And I don't have any wheel hop. So I don't really plan on upgrading my diff brace. If you do have wheel hop, I would probably upgrade your bushings or your control arms before the diff, because the diff braces or the diff bushings are going to transmit the most noise and vibration into the cabin. So it's not the end of the world, but it's just going to be a lot less refined. With the front mounts, what happens when you hit a big puddle of water? So if you hit a big puddle of water, big enough to coat the front mount intake, I guess you could run into an issue. But keep in mind, the front of the car is already building up a lot of pressure. That's why that's why your stock intake pulls from that area. It's basically forcing air into the intake, sucking from behind the front grill. So that snorkel can fill up with water and suck in water too. If you're driving through standing water or getting that much water in your grill, you're not going to have a good time with the stock intake either. So, it's a little bit more risky, but in my opinion, it's not that big of a difference. And for most scenarios, what people see, it's not going to cause an issue. But again, you just got to make that decision for yourself and be aware of where you're driving and what you're doing. What brand blinker fluid do I use? It's still OEM. I haven't changed it. If you have a goal of hitting high 10s in the quarter, I think you can do that with a TU pump. Just get a good tire and you'll be good. Am I on coilovers? Yes, I have KWV ones. You have wheel hop at the drag strip. Yeah, so that makes sense. The last time I had wheel hop, or that I thought was wheel hop, it was probably concrete, just kind of a different surface. But on regular asphalt, I don't have that issue. My car just spins. And I think a little bit of it has to do with my alignment, because I do have a good bit of camber in the rear as well. If your alignment's more square and you have a wider contact patch, you might be at higher risk for wheel hop as well. But again, I have more camber in the rear because I'm more concerned about how the car handles, not just straight line performance. Okay, so the car feels floaty at high speed. Is this due to the lack of an LSD? No, that's a suspension issue. And typically, just doing lowering springs will help. Because what basically is happening is the car is almost like you're not getting that connected feel between the wheel and the road. So you need something to help keep things grounded. And that's where a slightly stiffer suspension will be key. I never had that issue on my car, but I've said it before, I have a 4 Series. So it comes from the factory slightly different, or slightly stiffer than a 3 Series. It had the M Sport kit, and it doesn't have adaptive suspension. So it doesn't have the softer comfort mode. So it's kind of the lowest, stiffest OEM suspension that BMW offered. But all that aside, yeah, I've never had that issue with my car, even when it was stock. Will I come to Impact? I'm not sure, man. I will definitely try to make it happen, but no guarantees. Okay, so here's a good question. PCV kits won't pass emissions. I think one thing that a lot of people don't realize right away is it's completely reversible. So you can put your stock PCV on to go in for emissions testing. It's even easier to swap than your downpipe. You know what I mean? So you can pop that cap off, put your PCV delete kit on, drive around with it, and then for 2 weeks a year, whatever you need to get set up for it, you can swap it back. So that's what I would do if I was in that scenario. Luckily, I don't have to deal with emissions, but I mean, it's designed to be reversible. Is 600 wheel torque fine to run on an X drive with lots of hard launches? It's going to be dependent on your tire and your grip. I've seen a lot of people twist drive shafts on aggressive stock turbo tunes simply because they had a really aggressive tire and a lot of good prep. So if your car spins a little bit or you're on, like a regular street tire, you probably won't have an issue. Is raising the RPM limit to 8K possible? There would be a lot of work to get it to 8,000 RPM. I know a few people that revved out to 73 to 7,500 RPM with bigger turbos, again, just to get more out of it. With a stock turbo, it's definitely not useful. With a turbo that's rated for maybe like 1,000 horsepower, I could see it being useful. But I'm going to post a video about it later. If you guys saw what Mike Body is doing with his car, that's really the way to go. Don't raise the limit. Build your head. Get some additional airflow through there so that you can increase your spool and get a wider power band lower in the rev range. I think that's more useful than just raising the limit to compensate for a laggy turbo. And the ZF8, actually, I don't know. I haven't actually considered that. I don't know how the ZF8 would react at higher. I mean, it shouldn't really make too much of a difference, but I don't know. What do I think about the T51R mod? So I feel the same way I do about intakes. I'm just not huge on just intake noise. I like exhaust noise more, like exhaust sound. So I don't do a lot personally just to make the intake louder. And I think the way that my car is now, it's perfect. I get a little bit of intake noise, like the dramatic spool sounds cool, but I wouldn't do anything personally to make it louder. But I know a lot of people that love it. What brand front mount do I recommend? I can't recommend one more than any other. I think Cobb is probably the most unique one, coming in all the different colors and stuff. And then what is it? The RK Tunes one is almost like all silicone. So that's a little bit different. You won't have to worry about having like heat piping underneath the engine bay. But yeah, it just depends on your preference. Regular asphalt you spin to, yeah. I mean, it is what it is, man. When you have a high horsepower car, sometimes it's going to spin. When I really want to run it this year, I'll probably get like an R comp or something that can get stickier. But for a daily tire, it's going to spin, and I don't care. PS4, PS5. I'm trying to assume that you're talking about the tire and not video games. I haven't actually seen anybody run the PS5 yet. I didn't know that was out. I knew they were releasing it, but yeah, we'll have to see. Oil breather cap, is it a good buy? A lot of people are for it and against it. I don't plan on having one. I think to use it, the feedback that I've gotten from a lot of tuners and stuff is you either delete everything or leave it alone. So especially if you have like a valve cover, like the one from Vargas or something like that, that just deletes everything in the PCV system, it can work because it'll just be like a passive vent. But with some elements of the PCV still integrated to the stock valve cover, it doesn't seem to work very well. But I haven't used it. I just don't plan on getting one. What's the heat on Vargas? So I think Vargas just has a bad name in the BMW community, period. And that's never going to go away. So it kind of is what it is. The GC Pluses that I've seen haven't performed very well. The GCs work very good. And it's such a cheap turbo. Like, it doesn't really matter what his reputation is. It works well. So I still recommend the Vargas GC to a lot of people that aren't looking for a lot of power. All right, let's see how much longer we got. We might do this for like 15 more minutes, guys. Appreciate everybody hopping on. Do I see myself upgrading rods and pistons in the future? Yes. So my actual plans right now are basically just enjoying the car, and then I'm working on saving money, paying off debt so I can actually get the car I want, hopefully in the next like 3 to 5 years maybe. And then I'm going full send with the 440. So at that point, that's when I build the engine, upgrade the turbo, and really shoot for a lot of power. But not like this year. That's not going to happen. Can I use lowering springs on the stock M Sport suspension? Yes, I did, and I had no issues. I know a lot of people are concerned about blowing out the suspension, but in my experience, as long as you keep the bumps in place, you don't really have any issues. You know, just having a stiffer spring doesn't cause the suspension to like over travel. If you keep the bump stops in place, then it's not going to go past its limits. So yeah, I mean, I haven't had issues with lowering springs on any of my cars. And I had the Super Sports, so those were the lowest ones you could run. Can I run higher octane using boostane than the recommended 95 octane? I'm not sure I quite understand the question all the way, but I don't usually recommend using boostane. It's better just to get like higher quality fuel. It's not going to mix well, and just everything about it isn't really set up to run in our cars. That's why some people, when they pull their plugs, it's got like orange residue on it because they used a lot of like octane booster. So personally, I don't recommend using boostane. Use E85 or meth. How did I get more camber in the rear? I lowered the car. As low as I am, I cannot get less than 2.5 degrees of camber. So we have factory camber adjustment in the rear with one of the control arms, and I actually minimized it as much as possible because when I originally dropped it, it was like over 3 degrees. Would VTA cause a check engine light? So anything that you do to disconnect the crankcase hose that's going to the intake will cause a check engine light because that has that little plug on there. That plug is a heater for the crankcase hose. You know, if you guys have used catch cans in the past, you know, most of what it catches is water and condensation because especially when you cold start, you know, it's pushing a lot of water vapor through there. If you don't have that heater on there, then the water can freeze inside of the engine and cause that hose to burst. And that's why some people with oil catch cans, like their hoses burst in winter because it's got water vapor inside that freezes. So if you unplug that heater connection, it'll throw a check engine light instantly. Do Gen 2 motors handle more power? I think so. And it's still something to be proven. But all of the highest horsepower cars, like stock block cars that we've seen, are low comp TU engines. So I feel like that 10.2 to 1 compression ratio is really benefiting them a lot when they're running higher boost levels. I still don't think it's worth it to drop compression if you're building your engine. But if you want to start with like a stock engine that can handle more power, you want like a late model Supra or like an M340i or something like that. One of the 6-port TU cars. What's next for my car? So I said that earlier. I'm going to be adding port injection and doing a flex fuel tune this year. So I'll document all of that on YouTube. Would I ever make a video on proper tires? Yep, that one's going to be coming soon. Do I notice the Supras sound different? So the difference with Supra is that I feel like the biggest thing is their exhaust because they don't have any resonators. So it's very similar to like an M Performance kit exhaust. If you look underneath the car, it's basically just a long straight pipe. It's basically like what our car would sound like with a mid pipe with no resonators. So that's why I think they sound better from the factory. All right. One more. Upgrading spark plugs compulsory. No. So one thing that I say, again, that's different from what a lot of people say. If you are tuning your car, upgrading your turbo, or whatever the case may be, that does not mean that you instantly need to do a whole bunch of maintenance. Just follow your maintenance plan. It doesn't really matter what you're doing to the car. I tuned my car, flashed Ranny 85, upgraded my turbo and all that stuff, and I'm at 23,000 miles. I'm not going to swap my diff fluid and my transmission fluid and all these other things just because I upgraded the turbo. Like, they have plenty of life in them. The car is barely even broken in. So it really just is dependent on you, especially if you just did some maintenance recently, like in the past year or two. There shouldn't be any reason to replace spark plugs and fluids and stuff, just because you're upgrading your turbo. Just follow your regular maintenance plan. Let's see. Thoughts on pure drivetrain stage 1 or HP70? So for me, I think you either do HP70 or pure stage 2. That's my opinion, or whatever like the big one is. The stage 1, even though they said that they modified it to handle a little more power, it got a pretty bad rep up front because a couple people that ran it did some drag launches, especially on X-Drive cars, and broke it like immediately. And Chris Miller over there was basically saying that one of the components that isn't replaced with the stage 1 transmission is like the most susceptible to breaking when launching. So a pure stage 1 will handle more power, and if you're doing highway pulls, it'll probably work. But for any of you guys that plan on doing quarter-mile runs, just get a stage 2. Let's see, I got myself the 850. Have you read about how it performs on E50 versus the pure 800? I wouldn't expect a lot more power, man. I mean, it's even in the name, maxed out. They're only rating it for like 50 more horsepower. So if you got it, like, it's fine. But if you already have a pure 800, I don't think it's worth it to upgrade to the 850. Just get a full frame kit. But if you're running it on E50, you should be able to get between like 700 and 750 wheel with, with port injection and all the other supporting upgrades. Yeah, man, I'll try to do more live streams in the future. I missed the one back in December that I planned on doing, so I'm just glad I could hop on today. I am not doing injectors as maintenance. I do plan on doing a replacement DIY. So in order to do that, I have to replace mine unless I find some other unlucky individual that needs to do one anyway locally. So that's the only time I actually plan on replacing one. What would be needed for rear-wheel drive to out-launch X-Drive? A tire and really, really, really good prep. I mean, the thing with X-Drive is you're never going to be able to have, or the thing with rear-wheel drive is you're never going to be able to have the front wheels helping pull you forward. You know what I mean? That's just going to be an advantage that we can't get. But if you can't do like a burnout and run a really aggressive sticky tire with X-Drive, it's going to struggle with putting the power down too. And spinning all four doesn't make you fast. So that's how I feel. Just getting a really good tire that you can heat up and launch really hard on good prep is going to outrun something that an X-Drive would do. Why is the hype on B58 more than S58? Because you can't do anything with an S58 yet. Like you can't really do anything easily. As soon as the DMEs are unlocked, it'll be completely different. But even now, there's so much more hype around the B58 over the S55, simply because it's a cheaper platform. It's easier to get into, easier to modify. It's just a much more attainable car. But once the DMEs are unlocked, the S58s are going to be rockets. They'll make names for themselves. Can we adjust toe with the factory rear? Yeah, you can adjust everything. Camber and toe. You got two different control arms with eccentric bushings that allow you to adjust in the back. So, and in the front, you can adjust toe as well. You just can't adjust camber without camber plates. But the rear, I mean, we've got like 5 control arms in the rear. We better be able to adjust camber and toe. That would piss me off. Would I rather have multiple modded cars or one full send 440? Probably multiple. And obviously, like I showed you guys my garage, I've got multiple cars for a reason. I don't like having one car to do everything. I would much rather have a car to like beat on and just race, a car to drive like for fun, and just like, a family hauler or tow car. Like I really want like an X3 or X540i. So that would be a really nice upgrade to replace this E70 because it's really slow. But I would love to have another B58. What are my top 3 dream BMWs? Okay, so if I could get any BMWs, right, I'm going to modify them. But just to get like a perfect garage, if I could have 3 BMWs, I would probably get an X5 or X7. I would get an E30 M3. And then I would probably get a bike, honestly, because I really want a bike. So, yeah, get an E30 to like stunt with, an X7 to daily drive, and then an RR just to drive how I really want, I guess, because that bike will let you do anything. Can you T51 the Pure 800? Probably in theory. I don't know anybody that would do it. I mean, it's a pretty significant process to like machine the housing, but there's probably somebody that could make it happen. It would just be expensive, I think, especially for the first one. EFR 9280 or G35. I like the EFRs, man. I love the EFRs. I'm just a big fan of how they work, having the internal gates and factory boost control. The G35 is fast, though. It'll probably make more power. But I just like the drivability with a 9280 or with an EFR. Is the B58 better than the S58? I think it's the same thing with like the S55. You know, yeah, you can make 600 wheel horsepower on a stock S55, but the cost to get into it and the cost to modify it is going to be more expensive. So you change less stuff, but you probably pay a similar price to make the same amount of power. And I think the S55 cars typically have a harder time putting the power down just because of how the suspension is set up. So it depends on what you're going for. You know, the platform is more about handling than straight line speed. And most B58 owners are focused on straight line speed and just making power. So I don't really think the engine is better, but obviously you can change less parts and make more horsepower. Thoughts on polyurethane bushings? So I said this before, if you want to change bushings in the diff, it's going to make a lot of noise. Or if you do a brace on the diff, it's going to make a lot of noise. So I would stick with like subframe bushings or control arm bushings. And then for the transmission mounts, I haven't actually seen one. I saw the solid mounts. Actually, what was it? From like Twisted? So, I mean, it's probably okay. I just don't know that anybody really needs it yet. Where to sell cores? You'll have to call a shop that builds them. Call like P-Tune, Titan. You know, that's if you mean engines. I'm assuming you mean engines. If you mean turbos, then just sell them to the turbo manufacturer you're buying it from. As in an upgraded drive shaft axles for a better launch. I mean, it definitely won't hurt. Those are just supporting mods to prevent something from breaking. It's not really required. I think like best, example that we can use is one stock F30, right? Because he was pushing his car very hard. And on that white F30 that he had, the first one, not the shop car, I think he went through 3 or 4 drive shafts. So you don't really see him talk about it, but he was blowing them. So if you really pan up pushing big power, shooting for 9s and stuff, it's worth the upgrade. S58 made 800 on stock turbos. Yeah. I don't know, man. I mean, most of the dynos I've seen are around like 650. So 800 that's pretty high. But we'll see. Waiting on the Supras with the S58 TU. You'll be waiting for a while. G35 versus 9274. Yeah, it's the same as what I said before. I prefer EFRs, but the G35, at least like the 1050, it'll make more power. I wanted an EFR, but I heard they don't spool till 5,000 RPM. So here's the thing you got to remember too. Any turbo that you run is going to have its own spool characteristics, but peak torque is going to be different depending on how much boost you're running. So if you're running 30 PSI, it's going to hit 30 faster than it's going to hit 35 or 40. Boost is going to climb all the way towards redline. So it depends on how much boost you're making. If I'm running the same turbo on less boost and making less power, I'm going to have quicker spool or lower peak torque in the rev range. So, I mean, any turbo theoretically can delay spool until 5,000 RPM if you're running that much boost. But the EFRs, they spool quick. It's just the issue with the 9280 is it's just so big. Like any 1,000 horsepower turbo is really big for our cars. Or the 9280 is rated for like 1,100 or something. It's really big, so it's going to spool late. Did I see the downpipe B50 Supra that body posted? Yep. I think, I don't know the car, but a lot of times you don't know all the mods that people are doing with these cars. So it could have some weight reduction. It could have a lot of things going on. But, I mean, the Supra is fast, man. For the same mods, it'll always be faster than a BMW. Forgot to add that it was locked. Oh, yeah. So, and I mean, it's the same thing because they're going to be running Moon Boost on any low compression car. I think some of the Supras I've already seen running like high 20 PSI levels on the stock turbo, which I have yet to see anybody do that on a BMW. So, yeah, for whatever reason, they're just able to really cook those cars. All right, we're going to do, maybe like 10 more minutes. Again, appreciate everybody logging in. 2400 Vic is looking for a used all-wheel drive transmission, so message him if you got one. Do I like my trans? Yep, I love it. Haven't had any issues. The big thing that I did was I upgraded my clutch before I even did like my stock turbo tune. So I knew I was going to be shooting for more torque. So I just upgraded it beforehand. So I've never had any clutch slippage or anything. I've never had any issues with my car or with my transmission. When do I think the market's going down? I wouldn't expect it to happen anytime soon. Even if it does, it's going to be very gradual. Like if it's by the end of the year, it's, a little bit more stable. It's going to happen slowly over that time. Don't expect like some news to happen and like prices just drop or, we've got chips again. And so everybody is like struggling to sell their cars now. It's going to stay pretty much how it is. That's just how I feel. Really looking forward to the suspension videos. Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm going to make 2 different ones. One for people like me that are more focused on handling and how to set up your car and not be scared of words like camber. Like everybody doesn't want to run camber and stuff, but it's really important if you're setting up a car for handling. So I'll talk about all that. And then I'll talk about, setting it up for straight line speed, what you want to do to get the most grip and best performance. So yeah, look out for that probably in the next couple months. Oh, you're asking again about the springs. Yeah, you can definitely put springs on the stock suspension. It's going to be a stiffer ride, a sportier ride, in my opinion. Like when I had my H&Rs, it was sporty. There's a difference between sporty and harsh. Some people say that it's harsh because like it's going over speed bumps isn't as easy or going over potholes is rougher. But in my opinion, that's not an issue. I got a sports car because I want it to drive and handle sporty. So I don't have a problem with it. What's next? Again, I said that earlier. I'm going to be doing port injection and a flex fuel tune. The 9280 is bigger than the G35. I'm not sure about that. The 1050 is big, man. Like the G35 900 isn't as big, but the 1050, I mean, it's in the name. It's rated for over 1,000 horsepower. That's a big turbo. The best E85% for power if fueling isn't an issue, 9,000, all of it. Would I say the DAW is the best turbo or big boost GTX 1000? Those are 2 different leagues, man. One's going to make a lot more power and be a lot more fun. And in my opinion, it's the GTX. But the Flowmax is great for daily driving too if you're not looking for a lot of power. I just like the feel, the sound, and everything that comes with a bigger full frame turbo. MHD or boot mode, both are great, guys. I can't tell you which one to pick. What I usually recommend is download both apps and just see which interface you prefer. I guess long story short, I'm going to be trying out MHD as well. I showed you guys I got the license and everything. So I'll be doing my own testing and then making a video to compare all three, because I've had boot mode and MG Flasher in the past as well. Thoughts on mismatching springs to raise the rear? I haven't even considered that. I mean, I guess if you really want to raise the roof, raise the rear, there are a couple different ways that you could do it. You just get bags in the rear and just jack it up. That way you can really have it way higher. Before upgrading internals, I feel pretty confident hitting 700s. So that would be my goal. If I upgrade my clutch to support more power, I would push around 700 to 750 on the stock engine. So we'll see. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, I'll build it. But that's why I'm not doing it right now, because I'd rather just enjoy the car. What's up? What's up? All right, let's see. Okay, we got two last questions. Any benefits of running PI without a low pressure fuel pump? If you only have a TU pump, sure. You can definitely get more fuel from port injection without hitting the low pressure fuel limits. But if you already have like a Dort Stage 2 or something like that, like on a Gen 1 B58, you're not going to be able to get far on port injection without a low pressure fuel pump upgrade. Let me put it to you this way. I know a lot of people that go from a hybrid turbo to a full frame turbo. I only know of one person that went back from a full frame turbo to a hybrid. And the reason they did that was because it was easier for emissions. And he said, it spooled quicker than the turbo that he had and things like that, but it just didn't make as much power. And that's kind of what it comes down to. If you want more power, you're going to go with a full frame kit. I've gone through that battle in the past, and that's why this time I just jumped on the full frame kit first. So they both work. You won't necessarily be disappointed with a Flowmax, but there's going to be a point where if you really want to shoot for big power, you're going to have to ditch it. So, I'm not mad at having, a $5,000 turbo kit that makes just as much as your $2,500 turbo kit. It is what it is. But I also know that when I want to turn it up in the future, I don't need to change it out. So it's just like my personal goal. That's why I went that route. All right, last question. Your last couple questions. It looks like I've missed a couple. If my goal is 550 to 600, how would I achieve that best with no meth or E85? Upgrade your turbo. Get a turbo and you'll be able to get up there. I literally just made a video on that Friday. You need to up the quality of the stream. Okay, yeah. So this is like my webcam on my laptop, and I'm looking at it. I didn't realize it was going to be this bad. Normally I film videos and stuff with my phone that I can film in like 4K. So I'd have to get like an external webcam or something. So sorry it's such bad quality on YouTube. I didn't even chuckle. I don't laugh in real life. Getting very random low RPM knock about once a month. So if you're getting low RPM knock, you're probably putting too much gas, like too much throttle in a low RPM. I always forget the actual acronym. It's like LPSI, something like that, or LSPI, low speed pre-ignition. Don't quote me on that, but look that up and you'll see what I'm talking about. Especially with a direct injection car, you're kind of at risk of hitting knock by flowing it in the lower RPM. So just cruising, I don't know, man. That's a funky one, especially if you have a tune. The low speed, like low throttle applications aren't modified. So that's like either a fuel issue or something else going on. Double check your timing on your cylinders. Just see if it's like a specific cylinder that's having an issue. You'll see if like cylinder 1 or cylinder 6 or something drops out, and maybe it's just like a spark plug issue or something like that. But I would check your logs and see. Yeah, that's not really common, or not something that I've experienced, at least. At low speed, timing is all over the place, but I don't experience any knock. All right, guys, I'm going to sign off. Again, thanks everybody for logging in and tuning in. I'll be doing more of these in the future, hopefully like before the summer. But yeah, I just wanted to try it out. Thanks everybody for all your questions and stuff. And of course, if you have any other questions, you can hit me up on Facebook, Instagram, wherever you find me. All right. So we'll talk later. Have a good one.